So the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists was founded about 24 years ago. Initially, it was founded as a network for journalists, but over the last 10 years, we've also become a kind of consortium of media partners where we work with media from around the world. ICIJ is different to all other media organizations around the world because what we do is we bring media together to work together. These are investigative reporters who are used to working alone. They would basically be lone wolf journalists, and what we do is we bring them together in a team and we work globally across the world. I think ICIJ has created a new kind of journalism, what we call global journalism. And basically by making journalists work together across borders and across countries is a whole new kind of movement. I think you find that a lot of people are now copying our methods. You'll see a lot of collaborations, collaborative journalism that's being done. And I think a lot of that is because we have shown that it can work. And I think people are doing it on a smaller scale or just simply copying our methods. And it's important for ICIJ, of course, to always be one step ahead of everybody else. So we need to evolve and to grow ourselves if we want to keep this going. The idea is that at ICIJ, what we do is we find a great story, a great global story, and we bring it to media partners around the world. And in return for giving them the story, the media partners give us their people, they give us their reporters, and then we all work together as a team all the way through the project. The mission of ICIJ is to tackle corruption around the world and also to tackle inequity. We feel that inequity is becoming greater, and we think that journalists have a role to play in highlighting things that should be highlighted. The first thing we do at ICIJ is to do some research on a story because we want the media partners to want to do the story. So we tend to do months of work behind the scenes before we go to the media companies with the story. At that point, of course, we try to find something that is of relevance to each country that we want to work in. ICIJ, we're very tech-driven at ICIJ. We believe in using technology to do better journalism. So we have two main platforms that we work on. One is a communication tool. It's called our online newsroom. And that's where reporters can go in through their laptops from anywhere in the world, and they can talk to each other and communicate securely, but also share things that they find along the way. The other main technology that we have, developed is called data share. And it allows us to ingest really large data sets and to make those data sets available to the journalists. So we try to find stories that are very data-driven because we know that that works best in these global types of stories. Yeah, if you take, for example, the Pandora Papers, which was nearly 12 million documents, the first thing we did was ingest the documents and have a look at them ourselves. What we were looking for were really people of public interest, because we have to satisfy our lawyers that what we're doing is in the public interest. And so what you're looking for are public figures, politicians, well-known business people, other things like that. And once you've actually done that initial research, that's when we then approach media partners with the story and ask them to look at the documents for us as well. I started working at ICIJ 10 years ago, and at that point I wanted to change the model that existed, bring it away from merely being a sort of a network for journalists. When I started approaching media around the world, it was very difficult at the time. They didn't want to listen to this potentially new model. In fact, they told me that they had no interest in working with us. But at that point, I was approaching editors and the bosses of these newspapers and TV stations. And sometimes it would make me wait 2 or 3 hours at a time outside their doors. Their concept was that they didn't need us because they already had foreign correspondents and they had their own networks. But then I hit on the idea of actually approaching reporters. And every reporter, no matter what language they speak, they understand one thing, and that is a good story. So if you approach the reporter, I found that they do the advocacy inside the newsrooms for you. And so once I learned that, I don't deal with editors anymore, I just deal with journalists. So you're talking about the Pandora Papers. It took us 2 years from the beginning, getting the documents to when we actually published. It really started small. You build trust through time and by doing smaller projects with media partners. And each time you work with them, you're building up that trust. I come from a very large Irish family, and basically what happens in a big family is that the older children teach the younger children what to do. And it's the same when you're building these big collaborations. Once you've had experience working with people, they tend to pass that experience on to the newer members of the team. And with the Pandora Papers, we had quite a number of new media partners working on that, and they were being taught by their peers. There's a lot of peer pressure involved here in doing the right thing and not breaking the deadline. The kinds of stories that we're interested in are ones that are global, whether it be the environment or food security or medical safety or financial secrecy, which we've done quite a number of stories on. The criteria are really simple. It's basically we look for issues of global concern, and then we try to look for systemic failure there, which means that basically the systems like government and other things that you expect to protect people, if they're broken, then that's a really good story for ICIJ. But we do go one step further than most other media companies. We actually think about the impact because we want to do stories that do make a difference. And we think about that impact from the very beginning. So it really is one of the major criteria we use when we're deciding what to investigate. Yeah, ICIJ is entirely funded by people who donate money to us. We get most of our funding from large foundations around the world, but also from mum and dad donors. In fact, about 10% of our funding now comes from people who give us $1 or $2 every time. But it's very difficult to raise money for this kind of work because a lot of the time you're relying on wealthy people to give you money, and a lot of the stories we're doing are basically exposing wealthy people. So it's very difficult for us to raise money as other nonprofits would be able to do. They treat us with a little bit of suspicion. Well, the Pandora Papers was based on 12 million documents from 14 different service providers around the world. These are offshore service providers. People that basically set up companies in offshore tax havens for people who want to keep secrets. And these are powerful people around the world. Why we think it was important is that there are powerful people involved here. And I think what we've seen already coming out of the stories, we have world leaders, we had something like 35 current and former world leaders, we had more than 300 politicians from around the world, and we were able to expose the secrets, basically, that they had these offshore companies and what they were using the offshore companies for, buying and selling real estate around the world and things like that. It was of huge public interest. Yeah, the Pandora Papers was bigger than anything we've done before, bigger than anything that's ever been done before. It was actually the largest investigation in journalism history. It involved 600 reporters from more than 117 different countries and more than 150 media organizations around the world. Now think about that, all working together, basically, doing the story over a period of almost 2 years. Well, it took a lot of effort to produce the Pandora Papers. Mainly, we had to find a story that was going to be of public interest to people in multiple different countries. A lot of it was just really boring work on computers, people looking at documents day after day and trying to find patterns within the documents, because every great journalism investigation involves finding patterns, It's not just finding it once, it's finding it again. But also going outside the documents. There's a common sort of misconception that when you get a big leak like this, that all you have to do is sit down and write a story based on a document. That's not what happens. You have to actually go through the documents and use the documents as the beginning of the story. You've got to go outside the documents, looking at public records and really putting context around them, because it's the context that ends up being the good story. I think I was most shocked when we were researching the Pandora Papers to find the number of politicians who had publicly stated their opposition to offshore. These are people who got elected on the basis that they were going to stop this happening, or people who had, after we had published our last big investigation, the Panama Papers back in 2016, they had come out and said they were going to stop this kind of thing happening. And yet here they were, basically taking advantage of the same system. So I guess the question for me was why hasn't this ended? Well, the reason why it hasn't ended is the people who could have ended it are themselves taking advantage of it. And I think that was probably the biggest thing that shocked me. Well, the impact of the Pandora Papers, after the first week, we had proposed new legislation in the United States. And this was aimed at ending what we call the enablers. These are people that basically make the system work. The big banks, the big accountancy firms that basically, and also the law firms that end up writing the laws on offshore to make this happen. And that's a big change from the past. We affected the Czech election. The Prime Minister there was meant to be re-elected, was expected to be re-elected with a huge majority. In fact, he was kicked out of power. The president of Chile was impeached, and we've now got a corruption investigation in Ecuador against the president there. The smaller things happened in Australia. A company had $80 million seized by authorities, and one of the stories we did was the trade of Southeast Asian artifacts, and we basically showed how they had been looted from Southeast Asia, and the offshore world had been used to launder the money. The Denver Museum, these artifacts had ended up in museums all over the world, including some of the most famous museums of the world. That after a few days of publication, the Denver Museum said that they were going to start returning some of these artifacts back to Cambodia. But the reactions continue. Sometimes it takes quite a while before you actually see the full impact of stories like this, but it is happening all around the world at the moment. I think what you're going to see over the next few months are more stories coming out. We literally could not publish all the stories at one time, and so each media partner has been working on their own schedules. So I think even this week, as I'm talking now, there was a new story came out in Serbia, and there's going to be more stories are coming out. Of course, everyone's expecting and waiting for the names to come out, and that's something that we've traditionally done after every investigation. We publish the names. That will start in December, so almost a month after publication. This time we're going to do it a little bit differently. We're going to roll it out in stages. What we will do is we'll publish the basic information on our Offshore Leaks website. And of course, that will probably create a whole new round of expectation and also excitement. We don't publish everything from every document because we believe that only certain parts of these documents are in the public interest. In these documents, you've got a lot of private information, people's passport numbers, their bank accounts, their home addresses, other things like that. We don't think that anybody who isn't a public figure should have that exposed. So we tend to work differently to, say, an organization like WikiLeaks that just publishes everything. We actually believe that journalists should be the gatekeepers of this kind of information and should publish what's in the public interest, but not anything else. So that's why we don't publish everything. I think one of the reasons why you're not seeing immediate change after these stories, and as we have pointed out, we have now published 3 major investigations into this area, the Panama Papers in 2016, Paradise Papers the following year, and now the Pandora Papers. I think what we're finding here is that sometimes you just need to report on a story relentlessly before you get change. You've got to keep embarrassing the authorities. You've got to keep embarrassing the politicians. I think, like every bit of corruption, what happens is that the corruption basically becomes more sophisticated, and I think that's what we were seeing here. When we were looking at the Pandora Papers, we were actually looking at the changes that had been caused by our previous investigations and watching how people were getting around the new rules that had been imposed because of our previous stories. I do think that will probably happen again, but again, it's the role of a journalist to come out and to constantly come back and to question, and I think that's what we're doing. We're doing the role of journalists. Yeah, one of the big changes we found from the previous stories was that they were setting up what they call beneficial registers of owners. So these are registers of the actual owners of companies. But again, we were looking in the documents and we were showing how they were not applying those rules at all times. In fact, we're able to see how some of the clients were insisting that the rules not be applied to them because they were worried about a future, Panama Papers or Paradise Papers. And of course, here we have it now. It's called Pandora Papers. I think the future of ICIJ is really to get larger. I think what we have proven so far is that journalists are willing to collaborate. They are willing to cooperate with each other. But I think it's really only the beginning of ICIJ. I think that we haven't really explored the potential here. And I think what I'd like to be able to do over the next 10 years, if possible, is to really show the world what we can do if we all work together.